The annual Wong family reunion always felt like walking into a minefield, but this year the explosions would be different. I just didn't know it yet. I'm Jordan, and I was running late. Again. The familiar driveway of my parents' suburban home was already lined with luxury cars, Oakley's pearl white Tesla commanding the prime spot nearest the door. Of course. Jordan, you made it. My mother rushed forward as I entered, her silk dress swishing. Her smile was genuine, but tinged with that familiar worry. Oakley's been asking where you were. I bet she has, I thought, smoothing down my simple blue sundress. Traffic was terrible, Mom. Sorry I'm late. When isn't she late? Oakley's voice carried across the room like a perfectly aimed arrow. My sister glided over, champagne in hand, looking every bit the successful real estate agent in her designer outfit. But I guess that's what happens when you take the bus. I drove, actually, I said, forcing a smile. The hospital parking is expensive, but the nurse's lot has some perks. Oh, right, still doing that nursing thing? Oakley's perfectly manicured hand waved dismissively. Brian and I just closed on our 4th investment property this year. You should really think about your future, sis. Before I could respond, my father appeared. Oakley, sweetheart, tell everyone about that new development deal. I watched as she commanded the room's attention, something she'd perfected since childhood. My cousin Jeremy caught my eye from across the room and gave me a sympathetic smile. Everyone, Oakley clinked her glass. I have an announcement. The room hushed. I grabbed a glass of wine from a passing tray, already knowing this wouldn't be good. Brian and I are looking at the most amazing vacation property in the Hamptons. She gushed. It's absolutely perfect. Private beach access, 6 bedrooms, infinity pool. She paused dramatically. Of course, not everyone can afford such investments. Jordan, didn't you mention you were having money troubles? The room went silent. I froze, wine glass halfway to my lips. I never said that. I managed. Oh, come on. Oakley pressed, her smile sharp. I saw those collection notices in your mailbox when I dropped by last month. No shame in admitting you're struggling. We can't all be successful. Heat crept up my neck as relatives shifted uncomfortably. My mother's face fell, and my father looked anywhere but at me. I'm doing fine, Oakley, I said quietly. Fine? Sweetie, you live in a tiny apartment and take the bus. It's okay to admit you need help. That's what family's for. Her voice dripped with fake concern. Brian, her husband, laughed nervously. Oak, maybe we should… No, really, she continued. Jordan's always been the practical one. Some people just aren't meant for bigger things. That's when something inside me snapped, not in a dramatic, visible way. Instead, it was like a quiet click, the sound of a lock turning, a plan falling into place. I smiled, took a sip of wine, and said nothing. Jordan? My mother ventured, concerned by my silence. Oakley's right, I said finally, my voice steady. Some people aren't meant for bigger things. They're meant for smarter things. My sister's smile faltered slightly. Excuse me, I said, pulling out my phone as it buzzed. Work emergency. As I stepped onto the back porch, I saw Guy's message. Everything's set. The papers are signed. I looked through the window at my family. At Oakley holding court, at my parents beaming at their successful daughter, at the relatives who'd watched this dynamic play out for years. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my real estate agent. Congratulations, the Hampton house is yours. I smiled, thinking of Oakley's face when she'd announced her plans for that very same house. She had no idea I'd been quietly watching her social media posts about it for months. No idea I'd been building my wealth slowly and strategically while she flaunted hers. No idea that her perfect vacation home dream had just been purchased by her struggling little sister. I typed back quickly. Perfect. Don't let anyone know about the sale yet. The party continued inside, laughter and chatter floating through the windows. I stayed on the porch a moment longer, savoring the calm before the storm I was about to create. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with perfect timing. You're actually insane, Guy said, stirring his coffee as we sat in our usual corner of the hospital cafeteria. Like, actually certifiably insane. And I love it. 3 days had passed since the family reunion, and I was still riding the high of my secret purchase. 7 years of night shifts and living below my means had to pay off sometime. But the Hamptons house? That's next level petty. He leaned forward, grinning. Tell me everything. I pulled out my phone, showing him the listing photos. 6 bedrooms, private beach access, and the infinity pool Oakley wouldn't shut up about on Instagram. The same one she's been posting about for months? The very same. I swiped through more photos. Remember when I started picking up extra shifts 4 years ago? When Oakley told everyone at Christmas dinner that nursing was a backup career for people who couldn't hack medical school? I nodded. That's when I started seriously investing. Every extra shift, every bonus, straight into my portfolio. While she was posting about her designer handbags, I was meeting with financial advisors. And nobody knew? Why would they? Oakley made sure everyone saw me as the struggling little sister. It was the perfect cover. My phone buzzed, a text from Jeremy. Oak's posting about the house again. You seeing this? I opened Instagram. There was Oakley, posed in front of the house during what must have been her viewing, caption reading, "Dreams do come true. Can't wait to make this paradise ours. Blessed Israel luxury, real estate." Guy nearly choked on his coffee. She doesn't know? The seller's agent is keeping it quiet at my request. She thinks she's getting it. Jordan. A sharp voice cut through our conversation. Dr. Martinez hurried over. Multiple car pileup coming in. We need all hands. I grabbed my coffee. Back to reality. Dinner tonight? Wouldn't miss it. This is better than Netflix. The next 12 hours were a blur of trauma patients, surgical assists, and paperwork. By the time I got to Guy's apartment, I was exhausted but wired. Your timing is incredible, he said, handing me a glass of wine as I collapsed onto his couch. Look what just came in the mail. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter from a development company, offering to buy my new property for significantly more than I'd paid. They're building a resort complex, Guy explained. They've been trying to buy up properties in that area. I stared at the number. It was enough to double my investment instantly. You're not considering it, are you? Guy asked, reading my expression. No way. This isn't about money. I set the letter down. You weren't there for my graduation. The nursing ceremony? I thought your family went. They did. Oakley showed up late, talked through my speech, then spent the whole dinner talking about her new real estate license. When I mentioned I'd graduated top of my class, she said, "That's cute, but let's talk about real achievements." Guy winced. Your parents? Dad asked Oakley for investment advice. Mom just wanted everyone to get along. I took a long sip of wine. That's been my whole life. Oakley shines, I fade into the background, but not anymore. My phone lit up with a family group chat notification. Oakley had sent a message. Big news coming soon. Family dinner at my place this weekend to celebrate. She thinks she's getting the house, Guy said, reading over my shoulder. She thinks a lot of things. I showed him my banking app, where years of careful saving and investing had built a surprisingly robust portfolio. Nobody ever asked how I could afford to live alone in the city on a nurse's salary. They just assumed I was struggling. Because that's what Oakley told them to think. Exactly. I forwarded the development company's letter to my email. You know what the best part is? I learned everything about real estate investment from listening to her brag about it at family gatherings. Every strategy, every market trend. She taught me everything I needed to know to beat her at her own game. Guy's phone buzzed. He laughed. Jeremy wants to know if you're coming to Oakley's dinner. Wouldn't miss it. I pulled up the property documents on my phone. The closing papers should be finalized by Friday. Just in time for her announcement. Just in time, I agreed, thinking about the look on Oakley's face when she realized her dream house announcement was about to turn into my victory lap. Another text came through, this time from my mother. Oakley says you haven't RSVP'd for Saturday. Please come, sweetheart. Family should stick together. I smiled as I typed my response. Don't worry, Mom. I wouldn't miss this for the world. Saturday arrived with the weight of anticipation. I pulled up to Oakley's McMansion just as Jeremy was getting out of his car. Perfect timing, he said, falling into step beside me. You ready for whatever this is? More ready than she is, I muttered, clutching my purse with its hidden envelope. Inside, Oakley's house was a shrine to her supposed success. All chrome and white surfaces, designer everything. Family photos lined the walls, carefully curated to show her best angles. Jordan, Brian greeted me with his usual warmth. Oak's in the kitchen. She's been cooking all day. She cooks now? Jeremy whispered as we walked through. She orders in and transfers it to her own dishes, I whispered back. Always has. The kitchen was a flurry of activity. Oakley stood at the island, arranging takeout containers' contents onto serving platters while my mother helped. Empty bags from an upscale catering service were poorly hidden in the trash. Jordan, you came. Oakley's smile was bright but didn't reach her eyes. I was just telling Mom about the amazing news. Can't wait to hear it, I said, accepting a glass of wine from Brian. Oh, you're going to love it. It's life-changing. She straightened a platter of what I recognized as the local bistro's signature appetizers. Unlike some people, I believe in growing and advancing. My mother shot me an apologetic look. The doorbell rang again. My father arrived with Guy, who I'd invited as moral support. Oakley's eyebrows raised slightly at his presence. Still hanging out with hospital people? She asked, her tone dripping with condescension. Still pretending you cook? I countered quietly, nodding toward the hidden takeout containers. Her eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, Brian called everyone to the dining room. Before we eat, Oakley announced, standing at the head of the table, I have amazing news to share. She gripped Brian's hand. As you know, we've been looking at the most gorgeous property in the Hamptons. I felt Guy squeeze my knee under the table. And after some very exclusive negotiations, she continued, we are absolutely thrilled to announce. Actually, Brian interrupted, checking his phone with a frown. Honey, I just got an email from our agent. Not now, sweetie. As I was saying, Oak, the house sold. To someone else. The silence that followed was deafening. What? Oakley's voice was sharp. That's impossible. Check again. It sold 2 days ago. The agent says the new owner wants to remain anonymous for now. Oakley's face flushed red. But we had an agreement. We were going to announce. We had a viewing, Oak. We never made an offer. Because they promised to hold it for us. I took a slow sip of wine, watching my sister's perfect facade crack. Well, my father said, clearly trying to salvage the moment. There will be other properties, sweetheart. No. Oakley slammed her hand on the table, making the plates rattle. That was our house. My house. I already told everyone. She stopped, noticing my calm expression. Why aren't you more upset about this? Why would I be upset? Because you're supposed to be happy for me. You're supposed to be jealous. Jeremy choked on his wine. Oak, Brian said softly. Maybe we should take a minute. No, this was supposed to be perfect. I was going to show everyone. She trailed off, her carefully constructed image crumbling. Show everyone what? I asked, my voice steady. How successful I am. How much better. She caught herself, but not before our parents exchanged worried glances. Better than who, Oakley? She didn't answer, but her glare said everything. Dinner's getting cold. My mother interjected weakly. You know what's interesting? I said, reaching for my purse. Success isn't always about who shouts the loudest. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I pulled out my phone, pulling up the property photos. Sometimes the quiet ones surprise you. Jordan, Guy warned softly, but I was done being quiet. Remember when you told everyone I was probably going bankrupt? I slid my phone across the table. Funny thing about that, Oakley grabbed the phone, her eyes widening as she scrolled through the familiar photos of her dream house. her dream house with my name on the deed. "This is a joke," she whispered. "The closing papers arrived yesterday," I said, pulling the envelope from my purse. "Would you like to see them?" The room erupted in chaos. Brian was staring at me in disbelief. My father was demanding explanations, and my mother had her head in her hands. But all I could see was Oakley's face, the exact moment she realized her struggling little sister had beaten her at her own game. "How?" she managed finally. I stood up, smoothing my dress. "Maybe we should talk about real achievements." "This isn't possible," Oakley kept saying, flipping through the closing papers with trembling hands. "You can't afford this. You're a nurse." "A nurse who knows how to invest," I replied. "You taught me that, remember? All those family dinners where you talked about market trends and property values?" Brian leaned over Oakley's shoulder, examining the documents. "These are legitimate. She really bought it. But—" my father started, then stopped, looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "Jordan, how long have you been planning this?" "Planning?" I laughed. I just saw an investment opportunity and took it. "Isn't that what you always praised Oakley for doing?" My sister's face had gone from red to white. "You did this to spite me." "Did I? Or did you just assume nobody else could achieve what you wanted to achieve?" "Girls," my mother pleaded, "please don't fight." "We're not fighting, Mom," I said, taking another sip of wine. "We're having a business discussion. Isn't that right, Oakley?" Jeremy cleared his throat. "Maybe we should eat before everything gets cold." "How?" Oakley demanded, ignoring him. "Where did you get the money?" "You really want to know?" I pulled out my phone again, opening my investment portfolio. "Every time you mocked my career, I picked up an extra shift. Every time you bragged about your success, I invested more. Do you know how much night shift differential adds up to over 7 years? But your apartment, the bus, is in an up-and-coming neighborhood that's tripled in value since I bought it. And I take the bus because parking at the hospital costs a fortune. It's called being practical," Guy spoke up. "Jordan's one of the highest-paid nurses in the trauma department. She's been published in medical journals. That's enough," Oakley snapped. She turned to Brian. "Call our lawyer. There has to be a way to contest this." Brian shifted uncomfortably. "Oak, we never made an offer. We have no legal grounds to—" "Then make some. This is our house." "No," I said quietly. "It's my house. And I think you're having trouble with that because you never thought I could be competition." The room fell silent again. My father was staring at his plate. My mother was close to tears, and Jeremy was trying very hard not to smile. "Competition?" Oakley laughed, but it sounded hollow. "This isn't about competition. This is about you trying to steal my dream." "Your dream?" I stood up, placing both hands on the table. "Let's talk about dreams, Oakley. Let's talk about my graduation ceremony, where you showed up late and talked through my speech. Or the time I got promoted to head trauma nurse, and you told everyone it was cute that I was playing doctor. I never... Or how about last month's reunion, when you tried to humiliate me in front of our entire family? That's different. I was trying to help." "Help?" Guy interjected. "By spreading rumors about her finances?" "Stay out of this," Oakley snapped. "This is family business." "He is family," I said firmly. "He's been more supportive than you ever were." Brian suddenly stood up. "Oak, we need to talk. Now." "About what?" "About the credit card statements I found. About the real reason we couldn't make an offer on the house." The color drained from Oakley's face. "Brian, not now." "Yes, now." He turned to the rest of us. "I'm sorry, everyone. We need a minute." They disappeared into the kitchen, but their heated whispers carried back to the dining room. "Should we—" My mother gestured vaguely at the food. "Actually," I said, gathering my things, "I should go. I have contractors meeting me at my new house tomorrow morning to discuss renovations." "Jordan," my father said suddenly, his voice rough. "Wait." I paused, purse in hand. I'm sorry. We should have paid more attention. To what, Dad? To my achievements? To the fact that I was building something while Oakley was just talking about building something? From the kitchen, Oakley's voice rose. I was going to pay it back. 60,000 in secret credit card debt? Brian shot back. When were you planning to tell me? My mother's hands flew to her mouth. Jeremy whistled low. I think, Guy said, standing up. That's our cue to leave. As we walked to our cars, the sounds of Oakley and Brian's argument followed us into the night air. Jeremy caught up with us in the driveway. That, he said, was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. It's not over, I replied, looking back at the house. This was just the beginning. What do you mean? I smiled, pulling out my keys. The contractors aren't just doing renovations tomorrow. They're doing an assessment for that resort development company. Guy's eyes widened. You're not... Like I said, I learned from the best. Sometimes the biggest deals happen in stages. The next morning, I stood on the private beach of my new property, watching the waves roll in as contractors walked the perimeter. The resort development company's representative, Sarah, stood beside me with a tablet in hand. The location is perfect, she said. Your property is the key piece we need to complete the resort complex. And the offer? She showed me the number on her tablet. It was triple what I'd paid. That's just the starting point, she added. We're also offering a lifetime membership to the resort once it's built, plus... My phone buzzed. Oakley's name flashed on the screen for the 5th time that morning. I declined the call. Everything okay? Sarah asked. Family drama, nothing unusual. I gestured toward the house. Tell me more about your plans for the property. As she launched into details about the resort complex, another call came through, this time from Jeremy. You need to check Instagram, he said when I answered. Oakley's having a meltdown. I pulled up the app. Oakley had posted a series of stories, each more unhinged than the last. The latest showed her crying in her car. Family betrayal is the worst kind. Can't believe my own sister would do this to me. Ms. Wong? Sarah was waiting expectantly. Sorry, what were you saying about the beachfront access? Before she could answer, a familiar Tesla came roaring up the private drive. Oh no, I muttered as Oakley emerged, designer sunglasses hiding what I assumed were puffy eyes. We need to talk, she shouted, marching across the sand. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Should I give you a moment? No need. I turned to face my sister. Oakley, I'm in a business meeting. Business meeting? She laughed hysterically. Is that what you call destroying your family? The contractors paused their work, watching the scene unfold. The only thing being destroyed is your illusion of superiority, I said calmly. Now, if you'll excuse us, Brian's leaving me. That stopped me cold. What? He found out about everything. The credit cards, the shopping, the lies about our investments. She pulled off her sunglasses, revealing mascara-streaked cheeks. He's staying at his brother's house. Are you happy now? Sarah cleared her throat. I can come back another time. No, I said firmly. Oakley's leaving. You can't just... Actually, I can. This is private property. My private property. And you're trespassing. Your property? She gestured wildly at the house. This was supposed to be mine. My dream house, my perfect life. Perfect life? I stepped closer. You mean the one you built on credit cards and lies? The one where you had to put everyone else down to feel superior? I never... Remember my first apartment? You told everyone I lived in a dangerous neighborhood because I couldn't afford better. That neighborhood is now the hottest real estate market in the city. Jordan, or when I got my first promotion. You said nursing was a dead-end job. Well, guess what? While you were maxing out credit cards to keep up appearances, I was investing my dead-end salary. Sarah's tablet pinged. She glanced at it, then at me. Ms. Wong, the board just approved a higher offer. Oakley's eyes darted to the tablet. What offer? None of your business. I said, but Oakley had already snatched the tablet. Her face went pale as she read, "A resort complex? You're selling to developers?" "Maybe. Or maybe I'll keep it and rent it out. Or maybe I'll just let it sit empty. The point is, it's my decision." "You can't." "I can. And you know what the best part is?" I took the tablet back. "I learned everything about real estate from you. Every boast, every brag about your investments. I was listening, taking notes, learning." Tears streamed down her face. "I'm your sister." "Yes, you are. And for years I watched you succeed while you made sure everyone saw me fail. Now you get to watch me succeed." "Ms. Wong?" Sarah gestured toward the house. "The contractors need your input on the renovation plans." I turned to go, then paused. "You know what's ironic, Oakley? If you'd ever bothered to actually be a sister instead of a competitor, we could have done amazing things together." "Please," she whispered. "Don't do this. Security will escort you out," I said, nodding to the property guards who were already approaching. "Don't come back unless you're invited." As I walked away, I heard her call out, "Mom and Dad will never forgive you for this." I turned back one last time. "Maybe not, but for the first time in my life, I forgive myself for letting you make me feel small." The sound of the waves drowned out her response as I walked toward my house, with Sarah and the contractors. Behind me, I heard the guards politely but firmly escorting Oakley back to her car. Sometimes karma needs a little help, I thought. And sometimes the best revenge is simply succeeding on your own terms. "Your mother's called 6 times, Guy said, setting a coffee in front of me in the hospital break room. "Jeremy says Oakley's moved back in with your parents." A week had passed since the confrontation at the beach house. I'd been pulling extra shifts to avoid the family drama, but it was catching up to me. "Dad left a voicemail," I said, checking my phone. "Something about fixing the family and being the bigger person. Are you going to call him back?" Before I could answer, my phone lit up with a text from Brian. "Can we meet? There's something you need to know." "That's new," Guy said, reading over my shoulder. "You going to do it?" I typed back. "Coffee shop across from the hospital. 30 minutes. Brian was already there when I arrived, looking exhausted in a wrinkled suit. "Thanks for coming," he said as I sat down. "I know things are messy right now." "That's one word for it." He pulled out a folder. "You need to see these before you make any decisions about the property." Inside were credit card statements, loan documents, and bank records, all with Oakley's name. "She's underwater," Brian said quietly. "The designer clothes, the fancy cars, the image she created, it's all debt. She was counting on that house to fix everything." "How?" "She was going to use it as collateral for a loan to pay off the credit cards. When that fell through..." He ran a hand through his hair. "I found out she'd been forging my signature on loan applications." My coffee went cold as I flipped through the documents. The numbers were staggering. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because she's not just destroying herself. She's dragging your parents into it. They're talking about taking out a second mortgage to help her." My phone buzzed. A text from Jeremy. "Family emergency meeting at your parents' house tonight. Oakley's idea. You coming?" I showed Brian the message. "She doesn't know I'm meeting you," he said. "But Jordan, be careful. She's desperate." That evening, I pulled up to my parents' house to find it full again, but this time the atmosphere was heavy. Oakley sat on the couch, looking smaller without her usual designer outfit and perfect makeup. "Jordan," my mother rushed forward. "Thank goodness you came." "What's this about?" "It's about family," my father said. "About making things right." Oakley stood up, hands clasped in front of her. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About mistakes and consequences." "Oakley, please let me finish." She took a shaky breath. "I've hurt people, made bad choices, but I want to make it right. Starting with you, Jordan." Jeremy, sitting in the corner, caught my eye and shook his head slightly. "I've been terrible to you," Oakley continued. "Competitive, cruel, dismissive. And now I'm paying for it. But it's not just me suffering. Mom and Dad are taking out a second mortgage to cover your debts? I interrupted. The room went silent. How did you? My father started. Brian told me everything. I turned to my parents. Did she tell you about the forged loan applications? The maxed out credit cards? Jordan, please. My mother pleaded. She's trying to make amends. No, she's trying to manipulate you into bailing her out. Again. Oakley's facade cracked. You don't understand. I need help. What you need is consequences. We're putting up the house as collateral, my father said, just until she gets back on her feet. Dad, no, you can't risk everything you've worked for. She's our daughter. So am I. The words echoed in the sudden silence. But you never mortgaged your house when I was starting out. You never rushed to rescue me when things were hard. That's different, my mother said weakly. Why? Because I didn't cry and manipulate? Because I solved my own problems? Oakley stepped forward. If you sell the beach house to those developers, I could… There it is. I laughed. The real reason for this family meeting. You want my house? It could save all of us. Pay off my debts, save Mom and Dad's house. Your debts, not ours, not mine. I grabbed my purse. And that house? It's not for sale. Not to the developers, and certainly not to fix your mistakes. Jordan, wait. My father called as I headed for the door. I turned back one last time. You know what the difference is between Oakley and me? I learned from my mistakes. She just expects everyone else to fix them. The door closed behind me, cutting off their protests. In my car, I pulled out my phone and called Sarah. About that resort offer, I said. I've made my decision. 2 weeks later, I stood in the newly renovated living room of the beach house, watching the sunset through floor-to-ceiling windows. The sound of cars pulling up the driveway broke the peaceful moment. They're here, Guy said, adjusting the appetizer trays we'd set out. Ready? Jeremy asked, handing me a glass of champagne. I nodded. Time to end this. The doorbell rang. I'd invited the entire family, parents, Oakley, Brian, cousins, everyone, for what they thought was a housewarming party. They didn't know about the papers sitting on my desk, waiting to be signed. My mother entered first, clutching her purse like a shield. Oh, Jordan, it's beautiful. The renovations turned out perfectly, I said, watching Oakley's face as she took in the space that could have been hers. Brian hung back, avoiding his wife's gaze. They still weren't living together, according to Jeremy's updates. Well, my father said, clearing his throat, this is quite something. It is, isn't it? I gestured for everyone to sit. But before we celebrate, there's something we need to discuss. Oakley's head snapped up. You're selling to the developers? Not exactly. I picked up the folder from my desk. I've created a trust. A what? My mother asked. A family trust. The house will be its main asset. I started distributing copies of the paperwork. I'm transferring ownership to the trust with specific conditions. Brian leaned forward, reading quickly. This is unexpected. The house will serve as a family vacation property, available to all of us on a rotating schedule. I watched their faces as they read. But there are rules. Rules? Oakley's voice was small. First, the house can never be used as collateral for loans or sold without unanimous consent from all trust members. Second, usage rights are dependent on financial responsibility. Meaning what? My father asked. Meaning anyone who wants to use the house must provide proof of financial stability. No outstanding debts, no legal issues, no hidden credit cards. Oakley's hands trembled as she held the papers. Additionally, I continued, I've arranged for financial counseling services, fully paid for by the trust, available to any family member who needs it. Jordan, my mother started, tears in her eyes. I'm not finished. The trust also includes a scholarship fund for future generations of our family, specifically for medical and nursing education. The room was silent as my words sank in. Why? Oakley finally asked. Because despite everything, we're family. And families should lift each other up, not tear each other down. I met her eyes, but they also shouldn't enable destructive behavior. The counseling services, Brian said slowly. That's your condition for Oakley, isn't it? I nodded. Complete the program, get your finances in order, and you'll have equal access to the house. The same rules apply to everyone. And Mom and Dad's mortgage? Oakley asked. Will remain their responsibility, but the trust includes provisions for emergency family assistance, with strict oversight and repayment terms. My father stood up abruptly. I need some air. Dad, no, let me speak. He turned to face me. All these years I thought. He shook his head. I was wrong about you, Jordan. So wrong. We both were, my mother added, wiping her eyes. Oakley hadn't moved, still staring at the papers. I don't deserve this. No, you don't, I agreed. But that's not the point. The point is giving all of us, a chance to do better. The financial counseling, she said quietly. When can I start? First session is scheduled for Monday, if you want it. She nodded, unable to speak. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out a final document. Brian, this is for you. He took the paper, eyes widening. This is evidence of the forged loan applications. What you do with it is up to you. The room held its breath as Brian stared at the document, then at Oakley. Finally, he tore it in half. Everyone deserves a second chance, he said, but only one. Oakley burst into tears. Now, I said, raising my glass, who's ready for that housewarming party? As the tension broke and people began to mingle, Jeremy pulled me aside. You planned this all along, didn't you? The trust, the counseling, everything? I smiled, watching my family move through the space. My mother examining the kitchen, my father out on the deck. Oakley and Brian talking quietly in a corner. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, I said. Sometimes it's being the person they never thought you could be. And sometimes, Guy added, joining us, it's showing them who you've been all along. Through the windows, the sun had set completely, leaving the beach in darkness. But inside, the house glowed with new beginnings and second chances. The autumn breeze carried the scent of salt and coffee as I sat on the beach house deck, reviewing financial reports. The trust's first quarterly meeting was about to begin, and I wanted everything perfect. Need help with those? Oakley appeared, carrying 2 mugs. She looked different, simpler, but somehow more genuine without the designer facade. Thanks. I accepted the coffee. How was your counseling session? Good. Hard, but good. She sat down. Brian and I are talking about moving into a smaller place, something within our actual budget. That's great. It's weird, actually living within my means, but also freeing. She gestured at the papers. How's the trust doing? See for yourself. I handed her the reports. Your credit score is up 50 points. 62, actually. She smiled slightly. I check it obsessively now, part of the recovery program. The sliding door opened as our parents arrived, followed by Jeremy and Guy. Ready for the first official meeting? Jeremy asked, setting up his laptop. As the trust's designated record keeper, he'd taken his role seriously. Before we start, my father said, I have something to say. Everyone turned to look at him. He pulled out an envelope. The bank approved our refinancing application. We're not taking the second mortgage. Dad, no, Jordan. You were right. We can't keep enabling destructive patterns. He looked at Oakley. For any of us. Oakley nodded, blinking back tears. Now, my mother said, pulling out her own folder. Shall we discuss the holiday rotation schedule? As they debated who would get the house for Thanksgiving, I noticed Brian hanging back, watching Oakley with cautious hope. The counselor thinks we might be ready to move back in together, Oakley said quietly, following my gaze. If we stick to our new budget. And the shopping? I unsubscribed from all the luxury marketing emails, deleted my shopping apps. She laughed softly. Turns out I don't need $400 sunglasses to be happy. All right, everyone, Jeremy called. First order of business, the scholarship fund. Actually, I interrupted, there's something else first. I pulled out my phone, showing them the email I'd received that morning. The resort developers made another offer. The deck went silent. Jordan, my mother started. You're not considering... No, but look at the last paragraph. They leaned in as I read aloud. In lieu of purchase, we propose a partnership. The trust maintains ownership while we develop and manage the adjacent properties. Your beach house would be the crown jewel of the coastline, increasing in value as the area develops. That's brilliant, Brian said, his real estate experience showing. The trust gets all the benefits of development without losing control. It's your decision, Oakley said softly. You earned this. No, I replied. It's our decision. That's what the trust is for. My father cleared his throat. I vote yes, for the Future Generations Fund. One by one, they voted. When it came to Oakley, she paused. I used to think success meant having everything I wanted, she said. Now I know it means being worthy of what you have. She looked at me. Yes. Then it's unanimous. Jeremy typed rapidly. I'll update the trust documents. Speaking of documents, Guy said, pulling out a newspaper. Show them, Jordan. I took the paper, opening to the healthcare section. There, under medical innovation, was a photo of me and my trauma team, highlighting our new emergency protocol that had reduced critical response times by 30%. My little sister, Oakley said, but this time there was no condescension in her voice, only pride. Not so little anymore, my father added. As the meeting continued, I watched my family. Really watched them. My parents learning to treat their daughters equally. Brian and Oakley rebuilding their marriage on honesty instead of appearances. Jeremy taking his role as family mediator seriously. Last item, Jeremy announced. The trust's mission statement needs approval. I stood up. I have a suggestion. Everyone turned to listen. The Wong Family Trust exists not to create wealth, but to create value. Not to enable, but to empower. Not to divide, but to unite. Through financial responsibility, educational opportunity, and shared experiences, we build a legacy of strength, wisdom, and genuine success. Oakley wiped her eyes. It's perfect. As the others nodded in agreement, I looked out at the ocean. The waves rolled in steadily, unchanging yet always changing, like family itself. Well, Guy said, raising his coffee mug, to genuine success. To family, I corrected, raising mine. To both, Oakley added softly. Because sometimes they're the same thing. The sun broke through the clouds, warming the deck as we clinked our mugs together, the sound mixing with the waves. A perfect harmony of endings and beginnings, of lessons learned and bridges rebuilt, of revenge transformed into redemption.